All right. Hello and welcome to PMP Live. I'm Alain, an event coordinator with Politics and Prose. Thank you all for joining us in this virtual format in the midst of these extraordinary times, throughout all of which we strive to continue to bring you the authors you love and their new books to our Politics and Prose community. At any point during the event, you can click on the link that I'll throw in the chat to purchase The Death of Comrade President on Politics and Prose's website. Today, you can ask the authors a question by clicking on the Q&A link, which can be found near the bottom of your screen. Finally, we want to thank you for being with us here today. We are so thankful to our family of loyal customers, keeping our business and our spirits afloat. Now, I'd like to welcome to PMP Live, Alain Mabanckou, celebrating his new novel, The Death of Comrade President. But Mabanckou is a French citizen born in the Republic of the Congo, an award-winning novelist, poet, and essayist, currently living in Los Angeles, where he teaches literature and creative writing in the Department of French and Francophone Studies and African Studies Center at UCLA. One of Franco-African's most recognized writers, he is the author of 6 volumes of poetry and 6 multiple award-winning novels, including African Psycho, Broken Glass, Memoirs of a Porcupine, and Black Moses, which is the winner of the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. His novels are published in more than 15 languages. Mabanckou will be joined in conversation with Dominic Thomas, chair of the Department of European Languages and Transcultural Studies at UCLA. He is the author of Black France and edits the Global Now, please welcome to PMP Live, Alain Mabanckou and Dominic Thomas. Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome.
Well, thank you, Alain. It's a great pleasure for us to be today here live at PMP. And Alain, I'm going to start off with a first question, perhaps, before we even go back to the Congo in the 1970s, where your book is set, and to talk about a new sort of autobiographical book that you just published that's all about the United States during these rather turbulent times. You write about Black Lives Matter, you write about COVID, you write about the political situation here. Perhaps you could start talking a little bit about those turbulent times before we go back in history a little bit.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me here. So I want to salute everybody over there, including Poetic and Prose. This is, for me, a great opportunity to talk about that book. As a resident in the United States of America, I'm very aware of what is happening here. So I did participate in a few meetings of Black Lives Matter in Los Angeles, protesting, just because I'm not only a Black, but I'm open about human rights, about social justice issues. So I need to give a kind of help to the people who need that. I know that I came from a country which is led by a dictator in which we don't have rights. I know also that Africans are suffering more, not about the fact that they are Black and African, but just the fact that the countries are led by predators who don't want African to be free. That's why the Black Lives Matter resonates a lot on my thinking, and writing Rumeur d'Amérique was a way for me to testify, to show that I'm living in this country, and I thank this country for opening its doors to me, but at the same time, I can help this country about my experience as African.
And before you left the Congo and went to France and then subsequently to the United States, of course, you grew up not just in the Republic of Congo's capital was Brazzaville, but on the southwest side of the country, in the city, the port city of Pointe-Noire. And you've written a lot about Pointe-Noire in translated books, The Lights of Pointe-Noire, and then Black Moses most recently, and the one just before that, Tomorrow I'll Be 20. And here we are again in the Death of Comrade President, back in this particular region of the world, and slightly later in the 1970s, where the protagonist is an older child. So when you went back to this particular time, of course, the work, we can talk a little bit later about the fictional nature of it versus the autobiographical nature. But the work, there's a lot of historical work that went into writing this particular book. And I'm just wondering, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about how you went beyond just pure memories and photographs, but how you went back to that particular time to make sure that that context was accurate.
Yes, in fact, I was born in the 60s, 1966. So my novel is set in 1977. So I was like 11 when the president was killed in the Republic of Congo. That shocked me back then. I didn't I couldn't erase it, even if I was like growing up in the city over there. So mainly my book are written about this kind of anger, this kind of sadness, and at the same time, this kind of nostalgia. I need to like turn my head to see back how the history was affecting us then and how the history is affecting the youth of the Congo, the people of the Congo. And then I try like to mix the historical facts with my own lives. I think the best way to talk about the real history is to talk through the lens of your own life, how the great history is like affecting the lives of people. History, the great one, is just the additions of the small histories, the small lives, which gonna give like the entire history of the country. So people can read my book like a kind of door open to the Africa, but not the Africa celebrated by the demagoguery or something like that, but the Africa celebrated or depicted by the experience. I learned from James Baldwin that our life is set by the experience. You cannot like say Black people in general, but you can say, you can like talk about just your experience. What I faced is not the same like what faced my colleague like Abdurrahman Waberi, or I don't know, Fatou Diom, or Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Each of us, we have our own experience, and that experience is the way we perceive the history. And the history of Congo, it's like a kind of mess, surrounded by blood, surrounded by assassinations of presidents. So I have a great link, I have a link with that assassination because it occurred in the middle of our own family. We were really concerned. So if you read my book, maybe you're gonna find like, or let's say 20 or 25% is about history. The rest is my own life.
It's interesting because you mentioned there writers like Adichie and Waberi and others that are your contemporaries, they're writing today. But there's so many great writers, many of them translated into English today, like Henri Lopez, Emmanuel Dongala, Sonny Laboutancy, who started to really take off in the late 1970s and early 80s. And their writing became known as the dictatorship novel. They were writing at the particular moment in history that these events were unfolding. And so in what way then does your work, how can it go back to that time period, and how does it differ from engaging with those things right at the moment when they were taking place? Like, what is it that you're trying to explain to readers by going back to that moment in history?
Yes, I think that at the times of Henri Lopez, Emmanuel Dongala, it was the time where we were embracing the communism. So the main issue was the Cold War. How are we gonna create nations after the colonization, after the link we had with France, and what kind of relation we're gonna have with the Soviet Union. So I lived back then, that time, but my experience with the situation is mingled with a kind of migration, the fact that all the Africans are going to France. They are trying to find a way to create another way of living. And we are in the era of the globalization. It's not now to celebrate only the history of your country. It's how you're gonna redefine Africa through the diaspora. So we saw that the great movements, the great ideologies about Africa came from the diaspora. You can take the negritude, you can take the Creolite, you can take the Pan-Africanism with Marcus Garvey, who came from Jamaica, but who was American. Those people created the dream about Africa. So by criticizing the dictatorship, nowadays, I want to remind them that Africa is not like a promised land, like we were dreaming back then. We have issues in Nigeria. We have issues in Cameroon, in Congo-Brazzaville, everywhere, in Republic Democratic of the Congo. We still have this kind of dictatorship regime over there. We thought that Henri Lopez and the other writer did resolve the problem. We're still living in this kind of situation in which we need to do something. Nowadays, a writer is not just someone who is writing poetry or writing a novel just to feel good. A writer, especially the one who came from Africa, have a lot to carry. He needs at the same time to be an artist, but he cannot avoid the call from the population, the call from the people. Because if you write about the snow, about the desert, about the rain, or about Europe, Africans are gonna ask you, what are you doing for us? You are like our voice. You should be talking about us. So that's why you're gonna see, as I'm still speaking out about dictatorship, even if I'm writing my own life. But once I go like in the radio, on television, I have always a few words for those people who are suffering in Africa, because I never forget where I come from. I'm African, I will live as an African, and I will die like an African. As a result, I need like to leave something which is gonna be reminded like my contribution to maybe the freedom of our continent.
One of the things in the book that's really striking, of course, this is the pre-internet era, right? And yet the little boy, through his Papa Roger, his stepfather, who runs the hotel, sits around observing the world. Every customer that comes is an interesting person to observe. And all of these customers leave behind treasures, magazines from Europe, books from other parts of the world, and so on. And what's really interesting in the book is the role of the radio, because we get these constant Soviet Union broadcasts. We've got the 24-hour-a-day almost government official broadcast, the sort of propaganda that's being decimated. And you, not you, but the character Michel, that might be you or might not be, it's your middle name, but it's not Alain. So we have to, we're working with some biographical information that sits around with Papa Roger also listening to the voice of America. So when you think about the little boy looking out to the outside of the world and getting that kind of information, which were the ones that you believed in, didn't believe in, and how did you sort of figure out what was sort of the truth in this particular context?
That was crazy, but because in the 70s, in order to know what is happening throughout the world, you have either to listen to the radio from the Congo, which is the radio from the government, or you can listen to Radio France Internationale, news coming from the France, which does mean from your previous colonizer, or you can listen to the Voice of America. We knew that America wasn't our colonizer, so they don't care about what they're talking about. So the best radio back then was the Voice of America. So we would listen to the Voice of America in order to know what is happening in our country, the Congo, since France wouldn't talk the truth. France has to protect its interests in the Congo. So I grew up listening to the Voice of America, and there was a journalist called Roger Guy Folly. I thought back then that he was an American, but he was an African. He has a French name. I thought he was a white guy. And one day I was surprised. I said that, okay, let me read my email. I received an email from Roger Guy Folly from the Voice of America. I said, oh, thank God, I'm going to meet finally Roger Guy Folly. And I went to the meeting. It was in the restaurant in Paris. As I get to the bar, I try to see everywhere no white people. There was just an old guy who was reading a newspaper. And it was that guy. I went over there. I said, excuse me, I'm looking for someone whose name is Roger Guy Folly. And he said, it's me. And he was from Benin. He was born in Benin. He was an African, and his name was well known throughout the Francophone world. Even in my family, we have people whose name are Roger Guy Folly, thanks to the Voice of America. So in my book, I wanted to point out the fact that beside the French culture we were taking another path in order to understand what was happening in the United States of America. My father would explain to me, who was Henry Kissinger, back then the Secretary of State. I knew everything about the President of the United States of America. That was for me one of the greatest achievements coming from my father. Even now, he's not alive now, but I still remember when we would sit under the trees in our concession discussing about what is happening in Iran, in Iraq, how the Ayatollah Khomeini is wandering throughout the world, seeking asylum, and finally being treated here in the United States of America and going back to Egypt where he died. I made some kind of connection. As a kid, I was wondering why some great people, what we were thinking back then, they often go and die in Egypt. Just because Egypt was for us a country of excitement. It was a paradise. We knew back then that even Arthur Rimbaud, the poet, French poet, went to Egypt and he died over there. That was for us a kind of surprise. Yeah. So for me, my childhood is linked with France and United States through the Voice of America. We thought back then that America was helping us to understand what was happening in Africa. That's why we listened to James Brown, Otis Redding, Ray Charles. We knew all about the Black Panthers, their movement. We knew everything about the Black culture thanks to the Voice of America, because the French didn't teach us such history. I was thinking that all our heroes were like white people. I didn't know then about Malcolm X, Luther King.
Yeah, and this little boy is, as you mentioned, he's based on the sort of the age, he's a young boy, maybe about to become a teenager. Yeah. So he's a protagonist that's young enough and innocent enough for you as a novelist to make him do lots of exciting and interesting things that are covered in the veil of innocence. And yet he's also starting to open his eyes, starting to understand a little better what is going on, yet not fully aware of just how dangerous he can potentially be in this volatile political situation, especially given what you find out are the mother's familial ties to the recently assassinated political leader, to the COMRADE president. And so for you, what is it about using a younger protagonist that allows you to not just map out some kind of autobiographical trajectory, but also as a novelist to be writing and working around these kinds of questions?
It was very, I can say, easy for me, because that Michel is like my alter ego. Michel is me. Mm-hmm. I'm just giving him what I witnessed back then. And at the same time, I wanted to create this kind of character who was like naive. Sometimes he's like playing with those concepts which are very complicated in his life. You wonder if he's understanding what is happening, but being a naive is the way to understand maybe our world. Sometimes we have just to be like, we have to erase all the things we got from the adults. That's why when you open the Bible, they're gonna say that the truth is in the mouth of the children, of the kids. And Michel, my character, looks like me when I was using like concepts from Marxism, Leninism, without understanding them. It was just, we was like reciting things without understanding them. And at the same time, as I was growing up, I was finally understanding that it was my uncle who was killed during that the assassination. It was my uncle who was like accused for killing the president, which is not true, because we know, and the history is there to explain that all the killers are still alive. And in my book, I didn't like take the precaution to hide the name. You're gonna see the name inside, because I know that history is in my back. History is protecting me. You cannot like hide the truth, like they say in my country, you cannot hide the light inside your pocket.
Right. And in terms of the title itself, so many of your works, obviously, as they're translated, take on different aspects of the book. But in the original French title, in the book, we learn all about Ngouabi and that particular historical moment. But the word cigogne is in the original title, that the storks are immortal. How does that particular concept play out for you in the book itself? Why was that an important title for you in the French?
I think that I was laughing because a lot of time, the title taken in French will change. That was the case with Petit Piment, which was translated by Black Moses. because Petit Piment is just the reality you're going to find in Congo, in France. They're going to understand that because we have the same way of thinking, our culture, because we did already the encounter between Europe and Africa. That's the case with the title, which was changed. The story Immortal is a title of a song from Soviet Union. So I guess that this kind of clin d'oeil of allusion wouldn't work in English. And maybe also Americans are still afraid of communism, I don't know. But anyway, you're gonna find the real title inside the book because the song is like depicted inside the book. It just say that the stocks never die, they are immortal. And even if you think that they are dying, but they are just crossing the sky, they're gonna come back like the soldier in the army are strong. You know, this kind of pride in the Soviet Union.
Yeah. And you may not know this, but of course you've been told that your works are always very funny, often disturbingly so. And so I'm just, wondering that even when dealing with the harshest, most complex political chapters in let's just say Congo's history, you not only are able to, tell the story almost in one go, that when one reads your works, it's hard to put them down. You want to follow the story, you immediately attach to the characters. They are delineated in a very active way. Sometimes it's like reading a sort of a fast, accelerated cartoon strip as these characters move around and get involved. So how do you go about balancing out the use of irony, various sort of categories and strategies around humor, when also dealing with these difficult political moments? And why is that important to you?
I think that humor is very important for me. I was taught by my parent that even if you want to talk about very serious problems, you need to keep your sense of humor. You need to be like someone who is spreading a good news. Mm-hmm. But people are gonna find behind the good news, the tragedy. And you can take novels I've written like Broken Glass, Black Moses, or the last one, The Death of Comrade President. The main things or the connection between those three books are the humor. I try to laugh at my own condition, but by laughing, I'm showing that I'm not gonna surrender. I'm not gonna lose what is very important for me as a person. I need to walk proud. I don't wanna be like someone who is there just trying to discourage people. And the humor usually works because it's universal. I know that what makes us laugh in Africa won't make laugh French people or American people. That's why I have to praise all my translators. They tried and they succeeded to make it very, very close. Even if I read my own book in English, when I'm like trying to read the proofs, I can see how, like Alain Stevenson, who is my translator from French to English, is working hardly and is showing that our culture is not a matter of color, because she's a white from Great Britain, but she's trying and she's succeeding to explain to the other people how we can laugh about African novels too.
Yeah, and the translators, we mustn't forget, do an incredible work and service to you here. And I think part of the reason why your work has been so well received in the various parts of the English-speaking world is because of the great translators like Helen Stevenson that you've had. So I have a last question before we open up to those that are joining us on YouTube and Zoom and other platforms is it's absolutely remarkable to think that essentially the political turbulence of this book brings us to the end of the 1970s, and that the current president of the Congo, with the exception of a few years in the early 1990s, has been in power since 1979, right, which is 41 years now. And so it'd be interesting for you to talk a little bit about that, but also you have been very outspoken, especially in the last few years, about these comrade presidents, presidents for life, that continue to populate the African political landscape. And if perhaps you could talk a little bit about that and the role of France in sustaining some of these leaders and some of the ways in which you have addressed these particular questions. But perhaps starting off with Sassou Nguesso and the rise to power in 1979 and how he's held on to power.
Yeah, I've been like, I've been criticizing that situation for now close to 5 or 7 years, explaining to people that it's inconceivable. It's not normal to see like a president is running a country for like 30 years. Even in France, if you tell French people that Emmanuel Macron gonna stay like 10 years, they're gonna be a kind of new Bastille fight. They're gonna be fighting over there. Think that even in the United States of America, if you said that the president gonna stay 30 years, people gonna be like mad. It's gonna be a revolution here. Even 4 years can be seen like enough. That's what is happening here. So think about when Denis Sassou Nguesso came for the first time as a president. I was 13 years. Now I'm 54 and is still president. That means it's not normal. It doesn't mean that only him can lead the country. So I said it, I met with French like leaders. I met François Hollande when he was a president. I met Emmanuel Macron, the current president. I met prime ministers. I did discuss about that. I talk in France Inter, Radio France Internationale, everywhere. I wrote the book. I was even like being seen like a kind of destroyer. I was considered by my own country like persona non grata. Today, I know that if I go back to the Congo, I can face something which is gonna be like very dangerous for me. So I take it like my role. I need to show to the young people in Africa that being a writer, even if you are successful or not, is being responsible in front of them, those young people. So I'm gonna keep on shouting, telling the truth, like pointing my finger to this kind of regimes, because it's not only the Congo Brazzaville. If you go like to Cameroon, it's been close to 40 years. If you go to Togo, the father died, the kid is now the president. Zaire, it was the same thing. Mobutu, 30 years, Kabila came, the son came in Congo Brazzaville. Overheard that next year they are trying to like push the son, Denis Sassou Nguesso's son, in order to become a president. That's not right. As writers, intellectuals, we have to like criticize the situation and help Africa to become a free continent. Africa is not like facing a kind of economic problem. Our problem are institutional. We need, first of all, to deal with those problems, the freedom of expression. This is very important for Africa. And I don't think that we have reached all the goals we were seeking.
Well, thank you, Alain. It's a really fantastic things that you've had to say. And it's always a pleasure to hear you discussing your work and the death of Comrade President, the latest book of yours to come out in English. And I hope that many people will read it and discover and continue to appreciate your works. And thanks to PMP for having us here today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. So now I want to let everyone know that they can feel free to put their question into the Q&A link at the bottom of your screen. It looks like the first one we have here is, Alain, are there different messages in your writing in different countries or cultures that you write to, knowing that it will be translated into so many different languages? Do you write to different, do you write out through your writing?
No, I think that as a writer, you don't cheat. You write what you are feeling. You cannot like say that, oh, I'm going to write that, so in France, I'm going to be well considered. I need to put like this, my character need to go to Central Park, so people from New York are going to be happy. And then he's going to go to Texas, so people from Houston going to dance. And maybe I can go also to the Dead Valley so that people know. You just write about your experience. The experience can be translated into any language. So cheating, if you cheat anyway, the readers gonna catch you. And that's very, very bad for a writer to be caught while teaching about your art.
Definitely. And it looks like we have one more question here. So if you have a question, please do put it in that Q&A link right down below. Is there a character that you had written in that through the editing process was edited out a bit that you wish had more life in the book?
I think that all my characters are treated equal. The main character or the other character, because the main character is very powerful just because the other character are doing something in order to lift him. So I think the great novel I've read, like 100 Years of Solitude or Absalom from Faulkner, those novels are great because of the other characters surrounding the main character. This is very important for us. Like if you go to the sea, it's not only the sea you're gonna see. You have the sand, you have the beach, you have a kind of pier. That make the beach somewhere to stay. So I think that my characters look like the people I have met, and they look like the people I want to meet. So they are me, at the same time, they are different from me.
Wonderful. We did get a couple questions in. Wambua says, when do you think that Africa will be 20 as symbolism by tomorrow they will be 20?
I think that the dream, when do you think that Africa will be 20? I think that Africa is not devoted to the tragedy. Our continent needs just real leaders. Our continent needs real education. And I think that as long as we are fighting for that, we're gonna succeed. So Africa gonna be Africa because we have that continent in our heart, and that nobody can remove it from us.
And then do you see parallels between the rise of extremism globally and politics in many African countries?
Yes, I think that extremism in any country is not acceptable. Extremism is a kind of generic notion in which you're going to find racism, segregation, supremacism. It's a kind of illness, like the illness, and as a doctor, we have to get inside in order to prevent people from getting sick. If you prevent people from getting sick by saying, okay, extremist is like that, this is the medication. Medication is education, get to know people, don't judge people by the kind of their skin, and so on and so on. We're gonna have the cure. It's easy for us to teach by education, and we can maybe cure the extremism before the virus. But sometimes we are led by people who are spreading bad things, bad news, who are legitimating a kind of white supremacism, extremism. You see, let's see, for instance, in France, people, they decapitated a professor. You cannot do that. By decapitating a professor, you are like decapitating the real culture. A professor is someone who is like trying to bring you from the darkness to the light. So you cannot do that. Extremism is one of the baddest illness we are facing right now. And we need, by any means necessary, not by violence, to stop it. Don't use the violence, because they are expecting us to be violent in order to come back and do bad things by saying that, look, we were attacked. In front of the extremists, we have to expose our capacity to love each other, to live together, and to think with our mind and erase all the kind of boundaries.
Thank you. Ijeoma says, not a question really. They're a first-time reader from your work from Nigeria, and can't.
Good morning. This is my country, Nigeria. I was there. Amazing country.
And Ijeoma, can't wait to engage you.
Oh.
So that's just more of a comment.
I think I lost your questions. There was a problem with connection. Can you say the question again?
Oh, sorry. It was just more of a comment. Just being a first-time reader and excited to read more of your work.
Thank you, I'm very pleased because I went 3 times in Nigeria. I went to Ake for the festival, invited over there. I went to Victoria Island. I lived over there for 3 weeks or a month, and I have a good connection with a lot of artists over there. I did produce in music one of the artists over there. His name is Wule Santimanta. He played in my band because I'm a producer of music too. And Nigeria is a country in which I'm very proud of Africa. When I think about Fela, the father, that was great. When I think the great writers coming from there, Teju Cole, Chris Abani, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, they are the writers who are giving us the pride to be African. We would like to be like Nigerian and more. They give us the Nobel Prize, Wole Soyinka, that's good. And they have the great writer like Amos Chitwola. That's one of the greatest country in Africa, and I'm proud of them. But they need to stop messing with politics because we need Nigeria.
Thank you. And then an anonymous attendee says, yeah, out of this discussion, perhaps why did you write African Psycho?
Oh, why did I write African Psycho? It's coincide with my arrival in the United States of America. So I read a lot American Psycho, and I wanted like to give a response by creating this kind of serial killer who is very awkward. He's trying to kill, but he cannot succeed. I try to laugh with this kind of genre called serial killer genre, in which you're going to find Stephen King or, I don't know, Stephen Ellis and so on and so on. So it's a kind of fable coming from the Congo. It's just not about a serial killer, but it's about how you can understand the fact that Africa is trying to copy what is happening in the Western world. That was maybe one of the novel in which I had a connection with the United States of America, at least in the principle. And it was written during the winter in Michigan. Maybe that gave me bad idea, but it's one of the novel which opened me the doors in the United States of America, because it was my first translation here. And I'm proud that my publisher in Great Britain, which is Serpent's Tales, put it in the collection of the classics. That's the first time I become a classic in my life, thanks to Serpent's Tales.
Wonderful. And then Wambua says, I'm from the University of Nairobi, and for our course major author, we are learning all of your texts, and they're excited on your insights today. They've really appreciated this talk today.
I say to people from Kenya, thank you. I have still to visit the country. I think that 2 times I missed the opportunity to go over there, but it's okay. I like what is happening over there. I read and read a lot. I read every time. Gungi wa Chongo, who is one of the greatest of us, live and teach close here in California. And I hope that people from Nobel Prize are listening to us to give the Nobel to Gungi wa Chongo. That's going to be very useful for us.
Yeah. I just actually hosted him a couple weeks ago for his new book. Yeah.
Good guy.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, him and his son were both on. It was great. Yeah. So just I do have one more question, Alain. What books are you reading right now, or what would you like to recommend to people to read?
Right now, because I'm like I become like an editor. I'm reading a lot of manuscripts on poetry in order to publish them. I'm reading Percival Everett and Sophie Percival, who is African American, and Sophie Oksenen from Finland. They wrote nice pieces of poetry in the languages. So it's going to be translated by someone, and I'm going to be the publisher. But beside that, I'm reading what the French people are releasing over there this last time. And not much, this book just came out. It's called America by François Bunel. That's very good, in which I have a piece inside about Los Angeles. It just came out in English. So I'm trying to read the other short story over there, and it's okay. And I have also my dogs. From time to time, we can walk. I can read them something, just a poetry. Dogs can listen to a book. Think about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alain Mabanckou, thank you so much. There's a link to purchase this book in the chat, straight from Politics and Prose website. So please do that. It's been such a pleasure. Dominic, thank you so much. It was great having you in conversation. You two are fantastic together.
Thank you very much for hosting us, and thank you for Dominic for handling that. And sorry, I tried.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you.
I like the guitar, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, the lap steel. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Alain, yeah, Dominic, thank you both so much. Everyone that joined us, we really appreciate it. Y'all stay strong, stay safe, and stay well read.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.